All right, it should be live, but we're going to double check here real quick because we're using the custom streaming service today.
Little tech check.
Perfect. Yeah, we're all set to go. Good morning, everybody who is tuning in. We are live for the South Florida Tech Podcast, a weekly show where we bring you the awesome, innovative people building our South Florida tech community. Each week, we'll introduce you to one of the Sunshine State's top tech leaders, learn more about who they are, what they do, and have some fun conversation along the way. Our podcast is, of course, presented by Tech Hub South Florida, a nonprofit dedicated to building South Florida into a tech hub and also formerly known as Palm Beach Tech. I'm your co-host, Joe Russo, the president and CEO, and I'm joined by my co-host, Joanna Mikkola.
Hey guys, Joe here, CEO and founder of Wyncode, now BrainStation Miami. Super proud to be the vice president and general manager there. And as always, so looking forward to the conversation today.
And where are you joining us from today, Joe?
Oh, yes, you're giving it away. I am currently at London Heathrow Airport, tucked away into a corner of the airport lounge here. And for any travelers out there, it's a crazy time to travel. The lounges are open here, so that's a positive, but keeping safe.
The podcast is going international. That is what we're taking from this. So I want to give a shout out real quick to our sponsor at Emerge Americas as well. Each year, global enterprises, disruptive technology, and elite startups are highlighted at Emerge's premier tech event, Connecting the Americas. It's held in Miami Beach, and to date has hosted organizations from over 40 countries and featured over 250 speakers from around the world. Thank you so much to the Emerge Americas team for helping build South Florida into a tech hub. Much appreciated, and looking forward to getting back to that in-person event. Today we have a special guest, Kelly Merbler. She is the founder of the Kelly Merbler Company, and it's a leadership consulting firm specializing in strengths-based employee engagement and retention programs, culture building, keynote speaking, leadership development. You can see where we're going with the podcast today. We're talking about teams. We're talking about building good companies. She discovered her passion in life several years ago while attending a leadership conference with Dr. John C. Maxwell. It was there she became keenly aware of her interest and passion for helping others discover their purpose in life. Since then, she became a Gallup certified strengths coach, a John Maxwell certified speaker, and provides a number of leadership and coaching programs to senior leaders and clients, such as Tech Hub South Florida members like NextEra Energy, Peak Activity, and City Furniture. A lot of really great tech companies for sure. And Kelly has also recently won the inaugural South Florida Business and Wealth 2021 Prestigious Woman Award. Yesterday, when we're recording this, was International Women's Day. It's Women's History Month as well. And there's really very few people who I think that could embody leadership and in such a powerful way as Kelly. So thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Oh, thank you both for having me. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So obviously you work with a lot of tech companies and you do a lot of work with them. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do with some of these clients of yours, and how you have come to do it as well.
Absolutely. So I stepped out of my corporate role just a little over 3 years ago, last month. And what I do now is I do leadership consulting. I work with a lot of companies, not just only in South Florida, but all over the world at this point, now that we're all virtual. And I help with building their culture, with really understanding how to engage every employee in the organization from the top level down to promote just fulfillment within their employee population to drive success within the organization. So that would be whether it's one-on-one executive coaching with their leaders or doing team type work with different departments or teams of an organization. And so a lot of it is focused around building a strengths-based culture is what I specialize in.
That's amazing. I love this. I engage in this. I've witnessed it. I've participated in it. So really excited to dig in. And I was curious if you can share a little bit more about, for leaders in companies, why is it important for companies to engage their employees, to do leadership and development programs? And then for the companies that are thinking about doing it or already doing it, what are the ways that they're measuring success? How do you know if those programs are successful?
Sure, great question. It is important, and I will use myself as an example because I was getting hungry. I wanted to learn more. And I do speak with a lot of our younger up and coming leaders as well, and all generations. I mean, leadership development isn't just for one generation, but when we invest in our people, it's a direct investment in our organization, because think about what the lifeblood of our organization is. It is the people that drive our organization. And if we are giving them tools and resources to invest in themselves, then that's how we're investing in our organization. And I think the biggest challenge that some organizations look at is there's going to be a cost involved in it. So I love that you asked, how do you measure the success? And the best advice I can give is understand that you're not going to measure this right away. This is something that, depending on the size of your organization, this could be years in the making, depending on how many employees you have. But if you have a smaller company, it may be easier to measure success quicker. But a way to measure success is, for example, doing engagement surveys within your organization and asking your employees, how do they feel about the culture of the organization? How do they feel about the development that they are receiving? And are you seeing the brand of the organization move forward in how your company is being viewed out in the world? And that eventually, when we invest in our people, I look at it as it's a return on investment, but it's truly, if we see the ROI as the return on the individual, that's going to drive what drives the organization, because those employees are the ones that are in there every day closest to your customer. And if they're happy and if they're fulfilled when they're going to work and they feel they have a purpose, then that drives engagement. And when we drive engagement, that's the fuel behind our organization.
Yeah, I love that. And just just to kind of like a clarification point, is leadership training, does it always have to involve an assessment? We're going to talk about Strengths Finder, but there's also Myers-Briggs, there's Predictive Index, there's so many. Adobe has Creative Type. Is development always tied with some sort of assessment, and why?
I think there's a big difference between training and development. Leaders are not trained, they really should be developed. And when we use an assessment, to do that, depending on the assessment we use, because there's assessments that are used in different ways, whether it's a behavioral assessment like a DISC or a Myers-Briggs where it measures the behaviors, that would be like, what room in the house would this person spend the most time in? That's what a DISC or a PI is going to tell us, where a Strengths Finder is going to tell us something totally different because it was never validated for behavioral. It's validated for talent development. And it's going to tell us not what room in the house are they going to live in, but how would they decorate the room? And what that's going to do is really help us show the uniqueness and the value that each employee brings. And how do we tap into that to foster that engagement within that person? And so training is maybe giving them the assessment to, just see what their behaviors are, what their strengths are. But true development, if a company is going to develop leaders, there has to be a coaching element behind it where they're being invested in understanding how to apply what they're being trained on.
So one of the things that, I think startups don't always take into account here is the importance of leadership development, right? It's the importance of also like understanding your team. And I've used Predictive Index before too. And it was funny, at one point we had such a yin and yang nature to our team, which was pretty humorous. And we all sat down and we talked about it, and it was like, yes, we can see it. But how does startups who are building themselves up differentiate or compare to, let's say, a corporate company somebody who's got a lot of resources, who's building big teams, like how does that really compare? And really what's more important? Is it building this right as a startup, or is it making sure that your large organization is really effective?
I think there's a case for both, but I'll use Steve Edwards as an example. I know a lot of us know Steve Edwards from virtual career fairs, and he was in that startup phase, and he invested in leadership development for his team most recently because they're establishing the lifeblood of their culture and how to take it to the next level, where they've already just kind of gotten there, and now they want to raise it up to that next level. And so a lot of startups that I work with, a couple other tech companies that come to mind, it's really understanding where's our culture right now. And it's establishing that, what is our mission? What is our vision? What are our values that we want to operate under? And a more established company per se is probably going to have that in place. And they're looking to take their leadership to the next level, to take the company to the next level, for whether it's a purchase or succession planning. And a startup, it's a baby learning how to crawl, and they have different needs. And when we invest in our company as a startup, it gives us a great foundation when we're learning how to crawl, because we start understanding who the players are in our organization, so we can learn more about each other. And there's a sense of unity when you think about that. If we know about each other early on, then we'll know how to career path people sooner. We'll know like how to align them better in the right role. And when I look at strengths, for example, that is such a great process in a startup capacity, because it gives you that roadmap from the beginning of who do you have on your team and who's going to be best as your company grows in different roles. And see, most companies, they hire for tenure, and I am all about hiring for talent, because you can't teach certain things. And when we understand what each person brings in an organization, then we're better to track them on the right path, so they're going to be most engaged when they're building your organization. So there's a case for both, but there's different needs for both.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I do want to talk a little bit about the Strengths Finder. I know that's one of the popular programs, and popular probably globally. I know I've done it. I know a ton of people who have done it, who continue to do it to see if there are differences. But something you mentioned really kind of like caught my ear, which is, hiring for talent, which I also, interpreted as potential. So it's interesting, like, what are your thoughts on, like, once you have a team and you do something like Strengths Finder, you learn about each other and where you're going, but what about doing it in the hiring process? Is that like a yay or a nay? And just a last thing, I noticed you list your 5 top strengths in your email signature. And I thought that was really cool. So I have some insights on that, but I'd want to hear from you why you do that. And so a lot of questions in one, but what do you think about doing it in the hiring? And then why do you tell people what your strengths are?
Sure. So let me just set the record straight. For those of you out there that may be using StrengthsFinder in the hiring process, that is not the right use of it. It was never validated as a hiring tool. That's not what it was created for. It's a coaching and development tool. But once you have made the hiring decision, it is an excellent onboarding tool, because it gives you early insight and understanding of what are the unique talents of this person you have hired. What do they bring to your organization? And on the other side, it gives that employee a sense of unity, that they are joining an organization that really values what they bring, and that they want to learn more about this person to help career track them and understand where can they get the most fulfillment and the best out of that employee. So when a new employee comes in, I've seen it in organizations that use it in their onboarding process, and it really does bring a sense of, I'm a part of something. I have value here, and they care about what I bring. And then on the signature side for my email signature, the reason I do that, and I've done that ever since I took my strengths assessment, in 2000, I think it was 16, because it's who I am. And when my signature goes out, it is my signature. Like, I know who I am, and I want other people to know what I bring. And it sparks the best conversations sometimes. Like, for example, Joe, if you saw my email signature, you were immediately intrigued. So it's working, obviously. And you're curious about what my strengths are. And it sparks that thought of, oh, wow, she has a strength just like me. That's really cool. So that sense of we all bring a value, and I share who I am. I'm extremely transparent, and that is who I've always been. And I want people to know who I am.
That's cool. I love that. And it does draw an immediate, I've never met you before, but right away I was like, oh, I know something about Kelly beyond just reading a bio. So I thought that was really cool. And actually for me, it was interesting because having done it before, I saw some traits there that I was like, whoa, I am not a futurist. This is like, it's cool to meet a futurist. So I do quickly want to ask, we're talking a lot about strengths and focusing on strengths and sharing them transparently. But what do you think? Is it, like, what's your advice to people? Like, should we focus on our strengths, continue building them? Or should we also work on our weaknesses? Or should we do both?
Popular question I get. And there's so much research and data behind this that Gallup has done for decades. And I was someone that always thought, let me work on what I'm not as good at, because I need to get that better. When I went through Strength Finders and my training around Strength Finders, it all started to make sense, and it flips that totally on its head, where it's, what if we stopped looking at what's wrong with people and start looking at what's right with people? And there's so much data behind, when we focus on what we are naturally good at, we have the ability to take that, if we develop it, so much farther to success than we would as if we focused on our weaknesses. Now, we're not going to forget about our weaknesses. That's not reality, because there are days that we have to focus on things that we're not as good at. But what the key is to understand what you bring, where you're going to have the most success if you develop it, and then manage our weaknesses through complementary partners around us that bring what we don't. And that's how I leverage my weaknesses now. I know who's good at what I'm not. And when I need to bring them into that project or the conversation, I lean into them and I ask their advice, how they see it through their lens. So I know how to approach it through a perspective that I don't have within me as easily. And so it's managing our weaknesses is the key. And it's usually because people around us can do those things better than we can. And I know who to go to.
Perfect. Sorry, I had to take myself off of mute here. Kelly, one of the things that has really helped me is the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Yes.
Yes. I knew you were going to hit on that, which it's a book I got many years ago. There you are there. That's written by John Maxwell. And there was so much there that if you read it and reread it like every year, just to like go through them all, so super helpful. And I know that there's obviously some things you can point to in that book, but I know John Maxwell kind of inspired you to do what you're doing now. How did that come about? Talk about that part of your journey for a minute, because I feel like that's really exciting to get you to where you are today.
It is the pivotal moment in my journey, honestly. And I think when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And that is what happened to me. Because I spent 21 years in one organization right out of college. Millennials right now would look at me and say, oh my God, I can't even imagine that. But that's what I did. And I had such a great career. And about 16 years in, I started to, what I talk a lot about, become disengaged. I wasn't excited to go to work on Mondays anymore, and I couldn't figure out why. So just out of the blue, I think everything happens for a reason. I was invited to a conference, and John was the keynote speaker. It was simulcast. It wasn't a live speaking engagement, but I'd never heard him speak before. I knew he had books and I knew his name in the leadership world, but that message I heard, it was like I was in the room for a purpose to hear that message. And he talked all about living in your purpose, and how to build a life of intentionality and what leadership really was. And for me, it was the first time I really understood and heard a definition about leadership that was not tied to KPIs and driving numbers in a process. And it was like, this is so different. And I walked out of there saying, my goodness, I have been in a bubble for so many years. I haven't heard an outside voice say something that just, it awakened me. And I ran home that night and I said, gosh, I really need a mentor. I really need an outside mentor from a different point of view. And I'm someone that always wants to learn from the best. It's just who I am. It's the maximizer in me and my strengths. And I ran home. I poured my heart into that letter I wrote. I typed it up and I did some due diligence and research. And I found that executive assistant that he has by his side, Linda. And I just said, I have nothing to lose, but I'm going to ask for lunch and an ability to learn from John himself one-on-one. I hit send that night and I just let it go. And 3 days later, I was recruiting at my desk and my phone rang in my office. And I did not answer it because it was an unknown number. Who answers a phone with an unknown number on your cell phone? None of us. And I let it go to voicemail. That night, I go home, I never had a voicemail, but I remember I checked my email that night and there was an email with one line and I've saved it because it was the moment that changed my life. It said lunch, ? And in that email, one line said, Kelly, I tried to call you, but your voicemail was full. I will have lunch with you and I will have Linda in touch with you to set that up. And that was the moment that my life changed because it took me into that relationship with one of the greatest gurus of leadership ever. And ever since then, it's been 6 years. John has been my mentor, my coach. We have a great relationship and everything I've learned, I pay forward because he's the one that taught me how to be a great leader. He taught me the law of the lid, Joe. And if you know the first law in the irrefutable laws of leadership, the law of the lid. And if you are not working on yourself, people around you are not going to grow either. And you're going to put a lid on them and they will not be able to get above that lid. So your organization will only go as far as the lid of the leader that leads it. And so that was the pivotal moment that changed my life, Joe. And that is the reason I do what I do today, because I knew I could do so much more.
That is, I'm pumped. Like I can picture you guys lunch. I'm curious, like so many, like I want John to be my mentor. So tell us how you did it. No, but genuinely, I'm wondering, like it's hard to ask someone to be your mentor. It's hard to show in a request the value you're also bringing or that you're serious, et cetera. Like, how did you go about that?
Well, I give this advice to anybody that's looking for a mentor. If you're going to ask for a mentor, understand what the reciprocal agreement is on that mentor. If you're going to show up and ask for a mentor, you need to show up and be prepared for that moment. Always be prepared for the moment. And so it's not just sitting there, having a hamburger with him. It is seriously being ready with great questions, doing my research, understanding where I wanted to learn from him and asking the right questions. And on the back end of that, when I left that meeting, because that was one of probably 6 meetings we had consistently after that in a calendar over the next year. Every meeting I was prepared, and between each meeting, I applied what he taught me, and I kept him in the loop on what I was doing with what he taught me. And there's a lot of people out there that they meet with people and it's just like this great event and we shared a great lunch, but we don't use what they teach us. And so there is an accountability factor if you're going to ask for a mentor, that let them know that their time was valued and you are not taking it for granted and you are going to apply it. And for 6 years, I will tell you what, anytime I do something that John has, poured into me and I'm able to have a great success story from it, he gets a text from me and I share with him because I want him to know that I'm his legs to his legacy, one of the millions of people, but I value what he teaches me and I'm not just wasting his time.
I really love the story, but when you say it with such gravitas at like 8 something in the morning, I really, really, really believe it. I love it, and I know you got a big cup of coffee there to help you out too. But let's bring this down to like going into a tech company for a moment. We mentioned City Furniture, Peak Activity, Next Energy. You walk in and you have the same passion when you're speaking to their teams. Mm-hmm. What are the first things that you say when you walk through the door? Or what are the first things you hit on when you're speaking to a new group of people? Like we've met, I know you, I've seen you around. Like I know when I'm about to talk to Kelly, there's going to be something good, but nobody really knows, when you walk in the door for the first time, right? But like, how do you really set the stage for everything?
The most important thing is connect with the audience. Who's my audience? How can I best understand them? Like they're not as excited about like who I am. I want them to know like I'm here for them and what do they want to learn out of this experience? And I need to understand how can I add the most value to them. So the first thing I do, it doesn't matter if it's a company of 3 employees to a company of, thousands like a Nextera, but who's the audience I am meeting with that day and how can I best connect with them? And I'm just extremely real. I don't go in there like I know everything. I use examples of all the times I failed in my leadership and the things I struggled with. And I just connect with them from a perspective that I'm just like them and I have the same struggles they do. I'm just here to help them develop who they are, just like someone did that for me one day. And so I just get right down with them in the mud and we just have real conversation in our time together. It's not this structured, we have to stay in the box thing, but I let them lead me where they want to go. And that takes practice and skill, but the longer I do it, the more I understand the magic of it.
So through this whole journey and this transition, is there anything you think you would have done differently?
I asked myself that question a lot. And part of me says I would never be where I am today if I didn't live through what I lived through and have the experiences that I had. But, and there's something to be learned from that. But I also sometimes question, wow, I should have made that move so much sooner because I wish I had, it's time that I think I always struggle with. If I had stayed, I stayed 21 years, but if I had stayed, 15 years, I would have had, an additional 6 years to be building on my company and doing something. But building my company was never something I planned. It just organically happened. And the door opened because I just saw in my futuristic mind, I saw something that there was a need for. And it was never planned per se. It just happened because I couldn't get it to move forward where I was. And so it's a matter of, there's a point in your life, you have to take things into your own hands and your own destiny. And I campaigned so hard at the top level to do this for my organization but
Mhm.
it was timing, or it wasn't able to be seen the way I saw it. And so that's why I say, when your dream job isn't hiring, I built my dream job and I hired myself in that sense.
Mhm.
So would I do anything different? I would have more time to have started sooner, but I also appreciate what I learned through that struggle of getting here.
That's awesome. This is wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing. It's really inspirational. So we always like to cap off every podcast with a little rapid fire. So a few little questions here, and then Joe will cap us off with the final question. So for rapid fire, we know that the book on your desk is 21 Laws of Leadership, but what is the book on your nightstand currently?
Change Your World. It is John's newest book, and it's something that I know the story behind how much that book means to him, and so I'm just in the middle of it right now.
Awesome. What is your most productive time of day?
Early in the morning, before the kids get up. So between like 5:30 and 7 are my rocking hours.
Love it. Okay, so I'm assuming the time that you go to bed is.
On average, 11 p.m., honestly.
Mhm. And you're waking, and time you wake up is 5:30.
5:30 to 6 usually is when I'll wake up.
Okay, great. What is your favorite podcast? Do you have a go-to podcast that you love to listen to?
For sure. The Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast.
Awesome. And is there a motto or a mantra or a quote that you live by that you draw inspiration from time and time again?
I think we should always leave people better after we've left them than when we met them. So just kindness. I really believe in kindness, and there's so much more that's needed in this world. And so, how can you leave someone feeling so special after they've met you, that they're the most special person that you met? So, that's what I live my life around.
That's awesome.
And Kelly, one last question. What's one little bit of advice that you have for anybody who is listening in from our tech community who wants to become a leader?
Oh, good news. Everybody can become a leader. You're already a leader, because if you are a mom or a dad, you're a leader. If you're a teacher, you're a leader. If you are a team member, you're a leader. But if you want to become a better leader and raise your leadership lid, then just invest in yourself and surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that are more experienced than you, and you can learn from. I have a board of directors myself, and these are individuals that are my inner circle. And some of them are people I've never met. I'm not going to lie. So I listen to them all the time, and they feed into my hunger for growth. So always be looking to surround yourself with people that are feeding your future and not starving your success. That's my advice to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us this morning. Much appreciated for your time and all of your support, and for being a member of Tech Hub South Florida. And of course, all the help that you give to a number of our companies through so many ins and outs. I know it's an interesting subject when we're talking about team building and we're talking about the non-technical side of technology, which is super important, that a lot of people sometimes glaze over. But I wanted to thank you again, and big call to action. If anybody wants to get involved in Tech Hub South Florida, go to techhubsouthflorida.org, click get involved. And Joe, tell us a little bit about BrainStation, one of our other sponsors here today.
Awesome. Yes, super proud to be partnered on this podcast and having amazing guests like Kelly. BrainStation is offering world-leading digital and technology training, web development, UX, UI product design, digital marketing, and data science. We've trained over 100,000 professionals in over 90 countries, and we're doubling down on all the work we're doing right here in South Florida, helping connect companies with great talent and training that talent. So if you need any of that, we're here for you guys.
Great job, Joe.
So thank you so much. This podcast will, of course, be out here within the week on all of our major platforms, Google, Spotify, and Apple. What's the other one? I always forget about Apple, the original, the OG podcast.
Apple.
Right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much again. Thank you for everybody who's tuning in, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your Tuesday.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, thank you.